And there's a big court reversal to tell you about in the battleground state of Ohio. An appeals court overturning a federal judge's ruling that Ohio's Secretary of State has to verify newly registered voters in the state. That decision is a blow to all voters, but particularly Republicans who had sought the order. It also comes amid allegations of voter registration fraud in Ohio, continuing allegations linked to the national organization ACORN. Left-leaning advocacy group runs one of the largest community voter registration drives in the U.S. Ohio's Democratic Secretary of State Jennifer Brunner argued that following the federal judge's decision would be too time-consuming. He had asked her to make sure that all the people who registered really had the right to vote. If it's too time-consuming, will she not have to do it right now? Well, she says there are other systems in place to verify voters' information. And as I'm telling you about ACORN, this national organization that is tied to these allegations of voter registration fraud, guess what? You know how they get their money to go out and get people to register? Your tax dollars. As state and federal investigators, the FBI, looking into ACORN's voter registration drives in at least 13 states, well, now some members of Congress want to cut off their funding. Congressman Thaddeus McCotter is one of them. He's also chairman of the House Republican Policy Committee. Wow, speaking of policy, Congressman, it's just unbelievable that after all of this has come to light, that any funding would go. Can it be stopped? Should it be stopped? And who is arguing against taxpayer funding going to ACORN?
Well, as you know, House Minority Leader John Boehner has made the call that we should end funding to ACORN and other groups that are engaged in what we believe to be voter fraud. Quite simply, the proposition is this: Congress should not spend your tax dollars degrading your vote. So what we want to do is have a thorough investigation. We want to look at stiffening penalties for these groups, and we want to make absolutely sure that your money is not used to dilute your vote. Now, to say that ACORN is left-leaning is like saying Terry Bradshaw may be bald. The reality is that these people have a partisan agenda, and what it is doing is precluding the full operation and the integrity of the balloting process.
Congressman, I'm so glad you brought that up, because they deny that they are partisan at all. In fact, last night I was in for Greta Van Susteren. Listen to the ACORN spokesperson who joined us exclusively on whether they're partisan or not. If you're nonpartisan, why would you take money from Barack Obama's campaign in order to do these get-out-the-vote efforts? What about this $800,000 check? Once and for all, clarify.
Let's be clear here. No money was paid to ACORN for these voter registration activities.
But to an organization that supports ACORN?
No, money was paid to CSI. That's not ACORN.
Did ACORN benefit from that money?
And again, it was money paid not for, first of all, it's nothing to do with the general election and nothing to do with voter registration money.
Did ACORN benefit at all from that money to CSI?
ACORN got money from CSI for turnout work in the primary season.
Okay. Well, there you go. Is that a close enough connection to the Obama camp, that they are partisan in the sense of they do take money and they do send some voters and they don't do as much checking, and now an appellate judge in Ohio at least stands in the way of all that checking being done?
Yes, I think that you're absolutely on the right track. I mean, we've seen such instances as recently a 19-year-old was paid in cigarettes and cash to register 72 times. Now, this may be the Democrats' version of an economic stimulus package, but it is certainly not the way you want your democracy to operate. What we have to remember, most importantly of all, is this is every American's fundamental right, and we believe duty to vote. But the reality is you cannot pay people to do this. You shouldn't pay them with government money, because what it does is it leads to quotas. It leads to people trying to get people registered even though they know that they have been, or that their registration would be falsified by being duplicative. This is something that is very critical. It is something that we're very serious about, and we would hope that the Democratic majority would stop efforts to fund groups who have a partisan nature such as this, that have engaged in such activities.
Can we fix it in time for the election, Congressman?
I think that it's something that, whether it's fixed in time for the election or not, what has to happen is that this has to be fixed, period, and this should transcend the elections to make sure that this right of every American is not diluted, is not infringed by fraud.
I am so concerned about voters who turn out having their vote count, voters who have the legal right to vote because of all of this voter fraud, especially what Fox News has discovered. And Congressman McCotter, I congratulate you on your efforts to bring this attention to the forefront. It must be rectified.
Thank you.
Take care, sir.